Hi guys, so for my trade book I chose The Grape of Wrath by John Steinbeck, and this little presentation I'm going to talk about a synopsis of the book, which is going to be title, author, genre, and brief summary. I'm going to make connections to my subject area, which is social science, and then I'm going to make my recommendation for the book, or different recommendations for the book. So here we go. Oop, there we go. So the synopsis here, so the title is obviously The Grapes of Wrath. The author is John Steinbeck, and the genre is an American realist novel. Brief summary. So, the book starts off with Tom Joad, who's pretty much the main character of the book. He is released from prison after a murder case where he was defending himself in a bar fight, and in the fight, he ended up killing the person. And eventually, he goes back to his family in Oklahoma, his family farm in Oklahoma. And when he comes back, it's much different. His family farm is completely changed due to the Dust Bowl and the sandstorms, and all of these family farms that were his neighbors are being tractored, which is like they're pretty much being evicted from their land because they're not using it by the banks. The banks are buying off their land, and they're being forced to move. And now his family farm is kind of the next to go. So when he gets back, his family is obviously very happy to see him, and at this point they're envisioning a trip to California where they've heard of these fruit picking jobs where they could start getting money and um, actually have jobs because they've now pretty much lost all of their money and income due to the Dust Bowl and losing their family farm. So the journey to California begins, and it's a long and strenuous journey, and it begins on Highway 66, which is kind of depicted on the cover of this book. A very, very, very famous highway, probably the most famous highway in America. And in it, during the journey, there's a lot of death. So in the beginning, the crazy old grandfather dies, and then a little bit down the road, also the grandmother dies. And eventually, while they're on the trip, over 20,000 people, they realize that there's over 20,000 people show up for 800 jobs, and people are struggling to find work and food, and they're staying in these Hoovervilles, which are pretty much a very poor slum towns where people are living out of their cars and makeshift houses and things like that. And throughout this journey, they have much hostility. Once they get into California, they're called Okies, and all these California people are seeing them as taking their jobs and their livelihood. And so during their struggle in California, they're struggling through life. There's worker strikes, employment, and then eventually they get employment of picking fruit because of these worker strikes. Jim Casey, Tom Joad's friend, gets killed by the police, and Tom Joad ends up killing a police officer and goes into hiding. They eventually, the family, while Tom Joad's in hiding, moved to a cotton farm, and his sister unfortunately has a stillborn child. These are all the kinds of struggles that they're going through. Um, and then end of the season, uh, at the cotton farms, there's no jobs for over 3 months, so none of them are making any kind of income. And to go along with that, there's also floods happening, which is, to top it all off, making life miserable. And then Tom runs off to organize migrant workers. And then towards the end of the book, Rose, who's the mother of the stillborn child, offers her breast milk to save a man from starvation. So these are all the kinds of struggles that the Joad family went through going from Oklahoma to California. And they thought California would be a bright, new, sunny state to go to full of jobs and opportunity, and they realized that the struggle was still very, very relevant in California, along with Oklahoma. So then connections to the subject area, there's a lot of connections when it comes to this book. The unit of study that we'd be using is the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. Here's like one major California state standard, which is discuss the human toll, the Great Depression, natural disasters, and unwise agricultural practices, and the effects of the depopulation of rural regions and political movements of left and right, with particular attention to the Dust Bowl refugees and the social economic impacts in California. This whole book literally discusses this entire standard. It's like actually like beautiful, a super beautiful connection to it. The book, you have the Dust Bowl, which is effects on the Great Plains, natural disasters, and unwise agricultural use, and then Dust Bowl refugees, the Okies, and then also talks about the impacts on California in California as well. All these refugees coming to California. The Great Depression obviously talks about the human toll, the struggles of the Great Depression, and lack of jobs and food, and all the struggles that these families are going through. And then you have organized labor and worker strikes, the lack of stability for workers, and zero job security. So this really is a great introduction and prelude to the FDR and the New Deal and what he was trying to fix for the United States and try to help the common people. So very very great book to use. Recommendations, obviously, I would recommend it for any U.S. history class, especially for high school. It's full of real life connections to the hardships and lifestyles of the 1930s and the Great Depression. Possible implementations, you could have the students read the entire book throughout the unit of the Great Depression. Um, that's a possible solution or possible implementation. You also have read the first half of the book, which is talks about the Joad family and their struggle to get in California, and talks a little bit about their struggles in California. You kind of end it right there, and then you could also instead make it kind of shorter. You could discuss the synopsis with the students, build background knowledge of the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl, and then have them actually watch the film. The film's really cool. It's about an hour and a half, so it'd take about 1 to 2 days to do this. And this is the image of the Joad family in the film. So those are all great possible implementations for the book. And that is my screencast. Thank you very much, and have a good day, guys.